Trying Heroin Drug Report. Yo, what's up? It's someone that's known one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report was sent in by, that is to say, Brodie, last name redacted, where he took heroin, aka Diacetylmorphine, with his dose from almost none all the way up to a half gram. And here's the full report details. Alright guys, here we are again with another report on heroin, another first time use. We don't have many of these, but we definitely need to shed some more light with what goes on, just considering how widely and strongly abused it can be. This is an opiate, a very strong downer, which is often cut these days. Brodie will have a follow-up report on this where he details further use, so keep a lookout for that. Here's his first time using it by smoking it. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. Hey someone that's no one. I would just like to start off by saying that I'm a fan of your channel and I've been watching your videos for about a year now, maybe longer. The DPH ones are always entertaining, but I also really enjoy the ones about more taboo drugs in the drug community that some so-called psychonauts look down on and never consider trying. But after all, drugs are just drugs. No drug is inherently evil, and a lot of the hype is overblown. Addiction having much more to do with circumstance and depression or other mental health issues rather than the drug itself playing the biggest role. With that being said, here's a drug report of my first time trying heroin and my thoughts on the drug as a whole, or at least my experience with it. Start report. I tried heroin for the first time about half a year ago, and I've used it just a few times since. Opioids were the only drug class I had yet to cross off my list. Well, that's not entirely true. I had in fact managed to get a decent high off of codeine in the past, but I'm not very sensitive to it. Codeine is what's known as a prodrug, meaning it is metabolized by the body into another drug where it has the effects. In the case of codeine, it's metabolized by the liver into morphine. It's the morphine that actually gets you high when you take codeine. The issue is that there is a specific enzyme responsible for the metabolism of codeine, and different people have different levels of it, meaning codeine hits different people differently. Some people it works very well and gets them nice and high. Some people not so much. There you go, a little drug lesson for you. Anyway, I'm in the second camp. Codeine barely works on me. I had to take a whole box of 30 milligrams just to feel anything. All I felt was a little itchy and a little fuzzy. Needless to say, I was not satisfied that I could cross opioids off my list. Yes, I have a list, and I've tried virtually every major drug except of course the great many research chemicals and analogs, which would be a bit futile to try and sample all of them. None of my drug dealers ever really sold opioids. Occasionally this one dealer would post that he had 40 milligram oxycodones, but they were super expensive. Anyway, back to the heroin. I live in the busy city of London, where any member of the public can readily spot drug addicts picking out their fix in the alleys throughout the day, use baggy lines in the streets, etc., etc. So anyway, I'm walking my dog, and I see a guy who looks the sort. You know, the sort. Waiting to pick up. And I asked him, "Are you picking up?" He said yes. I asked him what he was picking up, and he said dark. That's what they call heroin, and crack is white. I thought, fuck it, why not? And I said I'd chip in and get some too. The guy's name was Andy, and we waited for the dealer in the park. And eventually after 10 minutes, he arrived on his bike and dropped a little blue ball about the size of a Skittle into my hand. I gave him a tenner, and he was on his way. Andy gave me the guy's number, who was called Jim, if that's important. The crack and heroin dealers in London, at least as far as I'm aware, do not sell in grams or even points. Instead, they sell in these little tied-off grocery bags, double-bagged, and made to be very small, about the size of a Skittle. Depending on how good your dealer is, it will have about 0.1 or 0.2 of heroin, and much less if you're buying crack. Each one costs 10 pounds, but gym will do you 3 for 20 pounds or 5 for 30 pounds, and for some reason, 8 for 50 pounds, which is actually more expensive. I guess math isn't his forte. The heroin is a slight tan color, and sometimes gray. Sometimes it's crumbly, and sometimes it's in a little hard rock that you have to break apart yourself. It has a distinct smell, sort of vinegary. Some smell stronger than others, and some even smell remarkably like raw opium, which I have smelled. It's a pretty organic smell, and I can recognize it immediately, although it's not nearly as potent as weed. Anyway, back to the story. I took the bag back home and opened it in my room, emptying out about 0.2 grams of tan powder. I inspected it and smelt it, noting what I just described to be a vinegary scent. I thought it best to start with a very low dose. I quartered the powder and made a makeshift little paper trough, which would allow me to load the heroin into my oil burner pipe. I loaded a quarter of the powder into my oil burner in order to vaporize it. I considered snorting, but I wanted it to hit me quickly, so I could sooner gauge how high it was getting me. On a side note, the reason I have an oil burner is to just vaporize the occasional substance. I don't smoke meth, I promise. I put the pipe to my lips and began to heat the bottom with a lighter. It didn't really vaporize. Instead, once the glass got hot enough, it just started to burn and produce smoke. This is normal, but not what I was hoping for. I inhaled the smoke just once and waited to feel something. I quartered the powder and made a makeshift little paper trough, which would allow me to load the heroin into my oil burner pipe. I considered snorting, but I wanted it to hit me quickly, so I could sooner gauge how high it was getting me. I have to say heroin was both what I expected it to be, and at the same time, totally surprising and underwhelming. I had heard all the effects described in detail, the warmth, the nice body high, etc. I experienced these, yes, but I also experienced intense itching of the whole body, but mostly my face. I had heard of the itching, but I had not heard of it being so intense, so much so that it almost overpowered any pleasurable high I was experiencing. As well as this, I felt a massive hot flush all over my body, making me sweat like crazy. Luckily, this only lasted about 15 minutes. I couldn't resist the urge to itch my face, so I did. So much in fact that the next day my nose started to peel. Nothing serious, but it looked as if I was recovering from a sunburn. Heroin is romanticized and hyped in the media so much that I honestly expected it to be this wonderful, incredible high, that it would be the best drug I'd ever tried, and that I would instantly fall in love and become addicted. The film Trainspotting famously describes it as better than sex. To quote the movie, take the best orgasm you ever had, multiply it by 1,000, and you're still not even close. Granted, I didn't inject it, but still, it's not on par with sex, and certainly not as good as an orgasm. To describe the high, my whole body feels warm and tingly, and it just feels quite nice. Not pure fucking bliss, but nice. It feels like you're all sleepy and you just had a warm shower and you have crawled into bed under the duvet. It's nice, but that's all there is to it really. There are a few side effects, the itching, the sweating, and my pupils become constricted like pinpoints. If I take enough, my vision is blurred. As compared to other drugs, the pure ecstasy of MDMA is miles ahead, and I would also take a cocaine or amphetamine high over a heroin high most days. Although, not if I want to relax, I suppose. Maybe I'm more of an uppers kind of guy. But most of all, heroin is just boring. It doesn't change my perception like a good psychedelic or dissociative, and it doesn't stimulate my mind or connect me with others like an upper would. Of course, a break from thought and the associated anxiety that comes with it can be very welcomed. But heroin fails to even do this. My headspace on heroin is more or less the same as it is sober, which, again, I find boring. I tend to like my drugs to alter my perception in interesting ways. I've used heroin a number of times since first trying it, and I have to say it has grown on me ever so slightly. I guess I've just added it to my repertoire of drugs that I occasionally use. I've come to appreciate it for the nice body high it provides. It does give me occasional nausea, but that quickly subsides and the itching has become much less intense. I have also yet to experience the hot flush again. Maybe my body was just in shock from a totally new class of drug. I've experimented with higher doses and have nodded out on it, which is an odd sort of experience. Being half awake, half asleep, slipping in and out of dreams. It's nice, yes, but it's also a little uncomfortable when I'm right on the edge of asleep and awake. Like my mind keeps falling and catching itself. I'll rate the drug. For the main high, 4 out of 10. It is what it is, and what it is an okay body high. I do enjoy it, but not that much. I would rather take something more interesting. But I rate nodding out 7 out of 10. It is pretty interesting, and I get cool dreams. Also, the pleasurable body high is a bit more intense with higher doses, although I would say there is a diminishing return in relation to the dose and the actual pleasure, at least in my experience. I've never been physically dependent on a drug, as I never use drugs for multiple days at a time, nor do I really feel the urge to. I continue to use heroin to unwind occasionally, as well as a plethora of other substances for various situations. I don't see myself getting addicted anytime soon, but you can never be too careful. Would I recommend trying heroin? Of course not. The only drug I recommend anyone trying is DMT. End report. Thank you if you read that. I hope I didn't ramble too much. If you don't think it's suitable for one of your videos, I would understand, as I didn't really follow the normal format. The truth is, I didn't remember that much detail about the actual experience itself, so I found myself supplementing with more of my thoughts surrounding the whole thing. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to read, if you did in fact read it. Hope to hear back. Thanks. P.S. I would prefer to remain anonymous if you do decide to use my report. Winky face.